Hey guys, so this is going to be Navisworks Overview. If you're wanting to get into Navisworks kind of for the first time or just to get a refresher, then I think this will be a good quick presentation on it to kind of give you, the ability just to hit the ground running with the tool. So we'll kind of go over what we'll be talking about, but I'll primarily be oriented towards the design, not so much focused in the construction aspect of it. The tool, is going to be the same, irrelevant to whatever, part of the process you're at. So you can, get a lot out of that portion of it, of the just Navisworks in general, but a lot of my references are going to be design specific, if any, so keep that in mind. So Navisworks Overview, to kind of give you an idea of the agenda, we'll talk about what is Navisworks briefly, the different versions, which I think is kind of important. Navisworks, the UI, so basic navigation sets, creating sections, so on. We'll also look at save viewpoints, which I may have mentioned here, I don't know. And then some of the other tools, so Clash Detective, Timeliner, Animator, Scripter. We just briefly touch on these, really, just to give you an idea of what, you can use out there. I think we will take a look a tiny bit at Clash Detective. I don't have anything set up in this model, but we'll take a real brief look at it on one workflow that I think is really valuable. And then also some of the other tools as well. So what is Navisworks? Essentially, it's a coordination tool. What's really powerful with it is that you can host a ton of different files in it. I will be sharing this PowerPoint, and you'll be able to get that link. But you can host a variety of different things like 3ds Max, SketchUp, Revit, AutoCAD, and you can host it all into a Navisworks model with no problem. So more or less Navisworks use, more effective design, coordination across disciplines, review, increased communication, decreased RFIs during the CA phase, stuff like that. To give you a better idea of how many different platforms or how many different 3D models it can bring in. Here you have Navisworks, the NWF, which we'll learn a little bit more about later. NWC, NWD can be linked in there. DWG, DXF, 3DM. SolidWorks, SolidWorks, SketchUp models, 3ds Max models, Bentley, Revit, and this is only some of them. There's a huge list of all the different formats that can be brought into Navisworks. So a little bit about the application types and then file formats. It's kind of confusing because there's 3 of them. This example here, we have 2017. I'll be jumping into Navisworks and we'll be looking at the 2018 version, but just keep in mind, there's not a lot that's changed with the tool, so it won't vary very much. If you have 2020, no big deal. You should be able to get whatever information you get out of this should still be applicable in 2020. So application types, we have 3 different ones. We have Navisworks Freedom, we have Navisworks Simulate, Navisworks Manage. Freedom is essentially free. This is something you probably want to give to your clients if they want to view the NWD, or maybe external team members or somebody that doesn't have access to Navisworks Simulate or Manage. The next one's Simulate, and that's going to have like your tools like the Timeliner and animations and stuff in it. And then the most powerful one is Navisworks Manage, which has everything in it, but specifically the clash detection tool is in Navisworks Manage. And what I think is super powerful behind this tool, and I guess it's more powerful when everybody has access to Manage, which is something at my firm that everybody does, so that when I run my clash test, they can use that clash dialog box and get real-time information on their clashes, and it's a little bit more streamlined than having to export out viewpoints or an external format like HTML or something that you would then have to either open, or you'd have to view the viewpoints, which we'll look at in Simulate. So if possible, if you're trying to, if you have access to this tool and you have enough licenses, then I would push Manage as much as possible. And we'll briefly talk about that workflow when we get to the Clash Detective portion of it. So file formats, this is kind of confusing for a minute, but primarily depending on if you're sharing stuff, which is where NWDs I think are the most handy. But if you're generally, what you'll do is you'll start up an NWF file, and usually you'll have all your settings and your standards and stuff already kind of loaded in there, such as search sets and the way that you've broken out your clashes. And then what you'll do, and this is just I think it's federated model or something like that, but essentially this is an empty model, and usually if you look at it, the size of it is like in kilobytes. It's very, very small. It's usually just linking in your NWC files that you will export out of Revit or some other file format. You can append like a Revit model into Navisworks, but it'll create an NWC for you. NWCs are just essentially just Navisworks model types that they create from the authoring tools. So one nice thing is you can, with the exporter that you can tie into Revit, you can export out NWCs automatically to a file location, and then those NWCs are pathed to that NWF. And you just open up the NWF, you can always see the latest NWC exports. But all your settings, everything else stays the same in this main NWF. When you want to share with an external client, you'll take this NWF and you'll export it as a NWD file. NWD file is just a compiled version of all the NWCs into one file, so that there's no links or anything like that. And then you would, either email that, drop that in some Dropbox or OneDrive or something, and then they can open this file in any of these Navisworks models, and then they can view it without any issues with links or anything like that. And generally what I do is if I'm sharing the model, that's what I would do. So a little bit about basic navigation. So we have View Cube here, navigation bar, and this is kind of a lot of information, but it's really easy to do, or so I mean it's just easy after you get in there to kind of fill it out and see what best works for you. But it does have the orbit, and then it orbit function, which is right here, and then the look around function. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and what we'll do is we'll just jump into Navisworks real quick and kind of take a look at that. So I have Navisworks open, and I have no model open. If you have Navisworks on your machine, but you don't have any NWCs or anything like that, you can go up to your Open tab, and then down, if you go down to here to open, you can go down to your sample files. If you click on that, it'll browse you out to this location, and then there's three models: the Ice Stadium, Envirodome, and then Snowmobile. I'm going to open up the Ice Stadium. The Snowmobile is just a, what is it? It's a piece of equipment, essentially. It's not a building. So, either open the Ice Stadium or the Snow, or the Envirodome or whatever it was called. And then you can start working with a building. And essentially what this is an NWD. So we can actually come up to the View tab, and we'll go to Windows, and we'll open up our selection tree, and then we can see over here icestadium.nwd. This is a compiled version. There's no links. It's a standalone file that works by itself. So a little bit about the navigation is, if we come over here, we have that navigation bar. Up here is that View Cube. Each of these are, they work differently. So if we click on this orbit thing, we can see it has a little pivot point. I think if we click Control Shift and then you click down the left mouse button, you can move that pivot point around, and then you can kind of rotate. You can do the same thing up here on the View Cube. And then if you wanted to change this around, there's Free Orbit, which is kind of confusing. I don't use this much. You can see it's kind of all over the place. There is constrained orbit, which I haven't really used before. There's also down here you have the look around, look at, and focus. Look around I've used, like if you're, so let's look at this one real quick, and then we'll look at the look around. So we have the walking tool. I use that primarily the most, but then there's also the fly one. You can see it kind of flies. This one's hard to use in my opinion. I just use the walk tool. You can move. If you click the middle mouse wheel button, you can drop down in the Z-axis, and you can kind of move around that way. But if you're sitting here, it's kind of difficult a little bit to move. If you use the middle mouse wheel button, you can look up and down. If you pull to the left or right, you can move around this way. I use this the most, but some people will come in here, click on this, and then now they can look around and look at their space this way. But I primarily use this. Just move around. And they take a minute to get used to, but it won't take that long. So that'll give you an idea of how this works. And if you want to switch back to selecting items, you just come back over here, click your little selection button, and then you can start selecting items and seeing what their properties are and stuff. And if you do use this and you happen to use this in Revit or some of the other applications, you can click on your full navigation wheel and kind of use this as well. And there's different options for that. So back into the PowerPoints. So we have some dockable windows. So we have our selection tree, viewpoints, a little thing to allow us to look at different views. So this is looking at a plan view, but we also have this window open as well. So, you know, what we'll do is we'll just open up Navisworks again and kind of look at that. So the dockable windows, so all these are pretty much dockable windows. We can pull this off and then move it around the screen. You got a couple options here. I think if you pull it up here, you can pin it to this location. You can open it, unpin it, pull it down. If you move it down like this, you can't pin it. It's just what it's doing. If you pull to one of these options, it's just orienting it to that location, so up at the top, but it isn't putting it into that dockable location, which is like something that you would see here. Again, if you move it over, it kind of just orients it to the right, but if you want it to be docked, you would just come over here, click that, and then now you can dock that window. You also have this option, so you can see, get more here. So if we want it up here, we shift it up, and now it's attached there. Another cool one, so this is properties. This is helpful when you're looking at different items. Save viewpoints is really nice, because you can save different viewpoints within the model so that you can quickly navigate to those areas. And that's what's, and then also you have your videos that you can play within Navisworks. I haven't messed with videos in a minute, but if we go to the viewpoint tab, we should be able to just press play, and it just, all it does is it moves from one viewpoint to the next. If we click the square button, we can stop that. So viewpoints are pretty helpful, and also depending on how many licenses you have, if you export out a Navisworks model, or I mean a clash test, if not everybody has managed, then you would export out viewpoints, which is kind of helpful, and then over here they can navigate to each of those clashes. Another really helpful one, if we go back to the view, a lot of these tabs too are accessible through these buttons. So like this selection tree, you can actually turn it on here. The view tab and then over here to the Windows button is pretty helpful because it shows you everything. So if you happen to just remember selection tree, that's helpful. But if you don't know where everything else is, then for just one button to remember, or one button up here on the tabs is this Windows, because this has everything that can be turned on and off. Like for example, your Clash Detective. Again, if we go back to the Home tab, we can find that here. But if that's forgotten, this is just a nice place to remember where everything's at. So if we turn on selection tree is pretty powerful because it shows us our model, and then we can drill down into that model and highlight and grab specific elements. So we can grab at specific levels, things like that. If we wanted to drill down into that, we could, grab specific elements within that. There's also different ways to look at it. We can do a compact, which is everything, properties. So if we're looking at specific properties, and these are actually search sets that are built into here. Also, if we want to create our own search sets, so if we have categories and stuff like that we want to create, if we go back to our view tab, we can look and there's sets, and then there you can create your own search sets. But selection tree is just a way so that you can drill down and grab different things. It also auto does that for you. So if you grab these elements over here, you can see that it'll drill down into it for you. Also, if you do have problems with it selecting certain things, if you come back to your home tab, you can go down to select and search, drop that down, and then you can change what it's grabbing. So you just have different options. So here it grabs the entire floor, because each of these are kind of, so you can see the different symbols next to it, and those represent a certain layer or something within the within Navisworks. If you wanted to grab the entire file, you could set it up that way. So you just have different options. So if you have any issues when it comes to grabbing things, then just mess around with that. And I need to figure out how to start the presentation back where I left it. There it goes. So yeah, Windows, just keep that in mind when you're trying to find certain things. So selection tree, we kind of looked at that. So model, file, category, file name, file type, material. Over here, save viewpoints. We briefly touched on that, but to give you more information, just check this out and when you get the PowerPoint. So properties and quick properties. We'll take a look quickly at properties. Quick properties is kind of nice depending on how much you're leveraging Navisworks. So if we minimize this, we can take a look. I don't know if quick properties is set up in here. It might not be working. Sometimes it doesn't. We'll see. Yeah, I can't get it to work, but so we'll take a look at quick properties, kind of what we can set up, and we'll take a look to see if we even have them set up in here. But if we click on any element over here to the right, we have our properties dialog window open. If you don't have this open, you can turn it on, I think up here, yeah, right here, and then you can also go to your view tab and turn it on from the windows. But it just gives you information on that item, so type, icon, required, material, so a little bit about that, timeliner, GUID, just some different information, and some items have more information than others. A lot of these don't have a ton of data in them, but if there's certain properties you want to look at, then you just jump over there, and then you can take a look at this. And one cool thing is when you're setting up your search sets, which are a manual, essentially a search set is just, you have it set up to grab certain elements based off of a property value. So if we're looking in here and we say the item's name is sandstone, and we just grab all elements that have that property value in it, that's essentially what a search set is. So just keep that in mind. And also when you're navigating throughout here and you want to get some more information on a specific element, that's what that's there for. You can see almost everything has property associated with it. Even the higher you go up on this, so like even the NWD itself, it gives you properties on it. So you have a lot of different options to look into these elements. Quick properties. So if we come back, or if we go up to the big N, we can go to the options button. I think it's either general or interface. I think it's interface. If we go drill down into interface, then we have this option down here for quick properties. Yep, so we can see here that it was show quick properties is checked off. So if we check that on, we can then see it. And if you want, depending on how much you're using Navisworks and if this is a valuable tool, you know, you may want to go in here and set it up or not. But if you want specific, so everything in the properties panel is what's going to be showing up in this. So like here's category, item, property name, category, item, and then property is type. So those are the quick properties for this setup, but you can add as many as you want. And again, it's just looking at specific parameters that are associated with that geometry that you'll pull out of, so that you can quickly get a look at it. So if we press OK, we should be able to now see it. So we can see item name, and then item type down here. So again, item name, item type, and that should be for everything. So a little bit about selection and search sets. So there is a thing as called save selection sets, and these are manually selected items. So if you wanted to select specific items within Navisworks and then save them for future use, then you could do it that way. But if items are being removed from Navisworks or added, then they won't be automatically added to that save selection set. Also, if it's being removed, it won't show up in saved or in a search set or a selection set. But if anything's being added, it won't automatically be added to the selection set. So those are like specific items that you want to highlight, just to show at some point. Search sets, again, you can set them up as anything that you like: categories, phases, system types, work sets, things like that. Anything that you can pull out of an element as a property value, you can set up as a search set. And then the search set, every time you update your NWCs, then your search set will automatically include any new modeled elements. So a little about the AP. So, well, appearance profiler. Also, some people call it the AP. Depends on how much you use the tool. I think it's a DAT file that's created that you end up importing in here so that you can use it. But essentially, all it does is it color overrides elements within the model, so that when you get in there, it always looks the same regardless on what project you're on. This takes a bit to set up, and there's quite a bit in this example, but you know, it all depends on your workflows and how much you use Navisworks. Does this even make sense to create and manage? So, but it's there in case you need it. And what we'll do is we'll just quickly take a look so I can show you where it's at. If you're on the home tab, you can come over here to the appearance profiler. You can set it up here. If you want to load an existing one, you just click that load button, load it into the model, and then you can set it up however way you want. You'll have to individually load this to each NWF depending on, you know, what projects they are and stuff like that. But that also allows you the ability to edit and do whatever you want to that new one. You know, that's specific to that project. If there's things that you want to override or change based off of that project, then you have that ability. So selecting and then hide and unhide, these are kind of important depending on how you leverage the tool. But to give you an idea of how to use those, on the home tab, you have some options here to select. So you have select, that's just selecting one item at a time. And that's all dependent on how you're selecting items. But then you also have this option for a selection box, so you can kind of see how that works. That works the same as pretty much any other program. We have select all. You have select none, invert selection. So come in here, then we invert it. So there's the find items button in case you want to set up your own search sets. Also, you know, here's, if we come in here, grab these items, we can hide, or we can hide unselected. We can hide this one. I can't remember what this is. So this forces the selected item to remain visible during interactive navigation regardless of any performance settings. So if you wanted to mess around with that, I guess that's if you're navigating it and it's auto hiding certain things just to help with navigation and performance, then you have that option. I haven't really used this tool, but it's there. And then if you want to unhide all after you've went through and hit a bunch of stuff, you can also do Control H and that hides things. But it looks like if after you do that, then you just come here, you can unhide it all, and then unrequire all too if you have this set to anything. Section tools. So this is a pretty powerful tool. Well, I guess it all depends on what you're doing, but I like it quite a bit. So if we jump into the model, what we'll do is we'll close a lot of these windows. We'll come up here into the, I think, Viewpoint tab, and then over to the right we'll have Enable Sectioning. We can turn that on, and we can see it defaults to a certain one. I can't remember where this setting is. So I think it's in the options, but you can change the color of the sectioning for your models, or for when you're sectioning stuff, for what the that cut looks like what color. Right now it's set to red, so you can change that, I think, through here. Yeah. So if you go to options, you can change it to whatever color you want. So you can come in here and set up a whole bunch of different sections. So essentially right now there's one, but you can come in here and set up a section for the top. So if we turn that on, make sure to switch to that, and then we can align this to the top, and then we can move this up a little bit. We can switch back to plane one and then shift this back a little bit. So you have different options to configure it however way you want. What I usually do is I'll turn off all these planes except for one of them. I'll orient this one to the top or whatever makes the most sense, and then I'll just kind of move it around, get it correct, and then if I wanted to save this, I'd come back to over here, to the viewpoint, save this viewpoint, and then give it some generic name. So you can see if I go to bar and then jump back to view, it's there. And if you want to get this out of the way so you can view it, just turn it off there. You can also rotate. So if you wanted to give it some weird section, you have that option. And then you also have this option to create a box section. So and you can, I think, change the size of this box somehow, but I can't remember exactly. Oh, it's scale. So you can scale that box down, So you have a variety of different ways to section a building. Again, I primarily use this planes, turn on one plane and just leave it at that. And then I just orient it to different sides. So if I want it to the front, I orient it to that, and I can shift it around and stuff. You can build these into animations as well. That's a little bit more advanced, but there's an option to do that, so you can make some cool stuff with it. So markups and comments within the model. So I haven't had a chance to use this a lot. I think it's pretty cool, but you can add, markups. So you have the text option. If you select that, you can just draw, or actually not draw, but put in stuff. So whatever you want. If you wanted to change the thickness and the color and stuff, you have the. It's pretty simple. It's just color, thickness. You have text. You have your clouds, and then erase. And then every time you do that, it creates a viewpoint. So if I orient around, you can see it's gone now. So to get back to it, you would just press view, and then you can see that markup there. If you come in here, you can draw a cloud, and it's a point by point. So, and I think to end it, you would just press enter, maybe escape. Maybe it's C. Control Z. Seems to do it. So that's one of the tools. The other one's ellipse. I think that may work the same. Nope. So you draw a box, and then it creates that ellipse within there. We have a freehand line. And then continuing line, and then arrow. So a lot of options. Each of these creates, as long as you don't orient the view around, then you can put as many markups as you want on it. But then as soon as you move it, then it takes away those markups. If you place a new markup, it'll create a new viewpoint. I think you can actually jump back to the original. So if we jump back to this view 3 and start drawing on it again, it should just add markups to it. Yeah, so. And after this, you can then actually export this list out as a like a list, or an XML file. And I think that's the only option you have. And then in there, you can tie it into an Excel or something, whatever process you have. And then you also have this export viewpoint report, which dumps it out as an HTML. When you do that, though, I think both ways it'll export out every single viewpoint. So you may have to actually go in there and do some cleanup, but that option's there. There may be a way to just export out certain folders, because you can set up folders in here. If we add so new folder, and then you can drag viewpoints in there. So there might be a way to do that through here. I'm not going to try that out because I might have to go down a rabbit hole trying to get it to work right. So, try it out and see what works for you. Oh, after you're done with sectioning as well, if you go back, you can turn off by clicking this enable sectioning. Turn that off, it turns everything off. So, and then if you want it back on, just go to the viewpoint tab and turn it back on. All right, so measure tools. So jump back into it, take a quick look at this. We have review, so there's measure, and you just pick one point to another, and it gives you some generic measurements in there. It's set to meters right now, but well, I guess that's important. If that does happen, just go to your options, go here, and then go to display units, and then switch it to feet and inches or whatever makes sense for you. And then whatever else you need, you can see it updates. So there was also options for fractional inches as well. So there's a variety of different things too. Point by multiple points, point line, accumulate, angle, area. So mess around, see what you need, whatever the case is. I'm sure there's a measurement option for you. Mostly what I use is point to point. I don't, the accuracy behind this, I don't know if it's that great. I generally, lean to using Revit or whatever the authoring tool is, but you have those options in here. Also, if you want to turn this off, just come over here and just click on the select button, and then now it's off. If you want to clear this measurement, just come up here, or not that, but just click on the clear button. You can see it added a markup there. So convert to red line. So if that wasn't something that you needed, you had those options. Measure tools, so we talked about that. So a little bit about clash detection. I think this is, for the most part, the rest of this should be quick. So clash detective, if we look at that, I don't have anything set up in this, so maybe we can create one without making search sets. So if we go to our home tab, we can click on clash detective, turn this on, and then let's just clash everything together. You can see it's clashing everything. This may take a while. I'm going to pause this, and then I'll unpause it when we get back. Depending on how long it takes, it looks like it's almost there, so I may not pause it at all. Something that's nice is that generally you would create search sets, and what's nice with those is you can look at specific elements and set them up and customize them and stuff. So here's our report. It's done. If we want to go back and select different things, we just jump back there. So we results here. I won't again go into this too much. Like creating a new test, you can either add a test by right clicking or down here, then reset all. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do with this. There's different override options as well. But I think what's most powerful behind this is after you run your clash and you set this all up, then what you can do is actually share this with the team by letting them get into the NWF, so the main NWF file. And then what they can do is just copy that NWF and add their initials to it. They can get into the file and they can view all these clashes. Use the switchback function, which if you click on this tool, go up to item tools, and then click the switchback function. That's really powerful. That allows them to just come into this report, click on their clashes, especially if you group them good. Then click on their clashes, switch to Revit, resolve it, and then export out a new NWC. And then all I have to do is press update all. They see it. They're not screwing with the main NWF, and they're good to go. To me, that's a really seamless workflow. I'll do a video maybe after this to go over the switchback function. It's a really, really powerful tool, I think. And then also we'll talk about BIM track, which is really awesome. At least their group clashes button. So for the rest of this, I don't think we need to jump back into Navisworks, but what we'll do is kind of talk about it. So Timeliner, this gives you the ability to simulate project schedules. So you can tie P6 into this, or Microsoft projects, an Excel file, tie this into it, and then tie your model elements to that. And then you simulate that and just play it like an animation pretty much. It's primarily used for construction. but maybe a good marketing tool. But I wouldn't recommend that because there's quite a bit of effort that goes into it, depending on where you're actually getting your information. If you just wanted to set up a quick one that didn't really relate to anything, I'm sure that would be fast. But if you wanted to tie it to a P6 schedule, then it does take quite a while to get it set up correctly. So there's some workflows out there. I don't know if I talk about it on my YouTube channel, but there's some workflows out there that kind of streamline that approach. I may create a video. I don't know. So we also have the animator. So that just animates elements. I think in this example I was animating a item moving throughout a building, but you can specify specific names. So door, crane, freeze dryer, which was the piece of equipment, truck, things like that. And you just animate it. You move it from one location to another. There's a whole bunch of different things you can animate. But you just tie it all together through this interface. Then you can export this out as a video or play it while you're in Navisworks. Scripter, this, to me, I've never seen anybody actually use this. But to me, it just makes the Navisworks, like when you're in a client review meeting or coordination meeting, it makes the model more interactive. You can press, down here you can see, you can press certain keys, or if you get to a certain distance of an element, it will automatically open a door. If you press a key, it'll automatically run an animation, stuff like that. It just makes it makes Navisworks a little bit more interactive, pretty much. Other tools, so you also have Autodesk rendering. I've heard good things about this. I've only used it when I was going through a tutorial. It's kind of nice. It's there. If it's your only option, then use it. It's there. Batch utility. This is really cool. You can automate common file importing conversion processes, all internal with Navisworks. I think it ties in with the Microsoft something batch thing. I don't know. But it's a pretty useful tool when you're creating your NWCs or exporting out NWDs, stuff like that. Model compare, so you can compare different models. So between two versions of the same model, differences of any two selected items. I think it also looks at the properties as well. Quantification, so quantity takeoff, more of a. I haven't seen a lot of people use this. I would imagine it's more of a construction tool that a lot of people are using. It has some standard quantification charts and things like that in there. So take it out, take a look at it. I would, if that's something you want to learn more about, then Eric Wing has a good 2-hour course on LinkedIn Learning that I would recommend looking into. It kind of goes over everything that you would want to know about the tool. And here's some generic resources. So LinkedIn Learning, Navisworks Essentials, taught by Eric Wing, Quantifications by Eric Wing, Navisworks Advanced. This course is super awesome. I can't remember who taught it. I definitely so this link, I'll share this, but this is Autodesk University. If you just search that, you should be able to find it. Recommended book. So this book is pretty sick. It goes over pretty much everything. There's nothing I don't think that the book covers that Navisworks has in it. This is even from 2016. They may have an updated one, but frankly, Navisworks doesn't change that much. So these are irrelevant. I think I may share those with this PowerPoint. I don't know. Oops. So, and then animation checklist. Yeah, that's irrelevant too. OneDrive Link, not relevant. So I may clean this up before I share it. But yeah, check these out if you want to learn more. Definitely reach out if you want to learn more. I'm glad to help anybody that needs it. Questions? Yeah, just leave them in the comments. Oh, and then also, feel free to use this PowerPoint for your internal efforts. Change it, update it, do whatever you want with it. It's out there for anybody to use. And let me know if you have any issues or if you're having trouble trying to deploy Navisworks or whatever the case is. Definitely reach out. So, thanks a lot for watching.